In this video, I'm going to explain the DBD currency balance system and how it would function in Dead by Daylight. I have other videos on it, but this one is straight to the point, detailing how it would exactly work with a Q&A section at the end of the video to address the most common questions and arguments against it. Quick synopsis: the currency system is inspired by Black Ops's Pick 10 system, and it essentially and very simply assigns a value to everything in the game that can be applied to a build loadout. So for example, an iridescent add-on will always cost 10 points regardless of which specific iridescent add-on it is, and it's set up this way for practicality. There's too many add-ons to realistically assign each of them an individual value, and there isn't really a necessary reason to do it. It's important to keep in mind this currency system is intended to make DBD significantly easier for the developers to manage, so everything is designed around that principle. So now let's move on to build allowances and the importance of acknowledging inherent strength within the game. For the sake of this video, we're going to say that Nurse is the strongest killer in the game and Trapper is the weakest killer in the game. So if you take a look at their builds, you'll see that Nurse has 50 points to spend and Trapper has 100. Now for a quick explanation of why we're doing this, let's look at the meta perk Pop Goes the Weasel. When this perk is used by Nurse and Trapper, Nurse is going to get significantly more value out of it than Trapper because of the inherent strength of her power in comparison to Trapper's, even if both are being played perfectly. This leads to a situation where you see this: the developers bending themselves into a pretzel trying to balance a single perk with seemingly no solution. However, with build allowances, Pop Goes the Weasel will now cost much more for Nurse than it will for Trapper, effectively acting as a tether that grabs the most powerful things in the game and the weakest things in the game and pulls them closer together, making everything much easier to balance and design around as well. To clarify, Pop in this example will cost 25 points for both Nurse and Trapper, but Trapper has a larger build allowance. This pushes everything in the game to what I like to refer to as the Goldilocks zone of balance, right in that perfect sweet spot where things are not too strong or too weak. Now the developers are attempting to do this themselves manually. The latest example is the removal of the ability to stack haste or hinder effects, which is a great example of how manual balance also leads to milquetoast or bland design choices, overall making the game less interesting. So for instance, the developers could hypothetically manually nerf Nurse and buff Trapper to push them into this Goldilocks zone, but again, that will lead to much less interesting versions of both characters. It will sacrifice their identity in sake of pursuing that perfect balance. With the currency system, both characters get to keep their unique identity, and it does not box the developers into that tight design bubble. Now onto the bigger point of contention: how does this affect the Survivor role? Survivor has solo queue, duos, trios, and 4-man swifts. Each of these, again, have different inherent strengths that need to be addressed. So I use a very simple formula to calculate their build allowances. Solo queue, being the weakest, gets 100 points like Trapper, duo gets 90 points, trios get 80 points, and a 4-man swift gets 70 points. And to be clear, each survivor is getting their own personal build. These points are not shared, they're just sacrificing 10 points per additional swift member. That's it. Currently, Behavior is significantly struggling with the problem of balancing the game between solo queue and a 4-man swift. They're designing killers that are way too strong for solo queue in my opinion because of 4-man swifts, but what ends up happening due to the Grand Canyon gap between solo queue and a 4-man swift, these overtuned killers like the Ghoul, for example, end up obliterating solo queue while sadly still not reaching the potential to compete with a perfectly optimized 4-man. Now if you look at this recent scoreboard from Outstarvo where he played against a fully optimized 4-man swift, not only in their builds but also in their gameplay as well, you'll see how too much advantage was simply stacked against him before the match even started. The game was quite literally rigged from the start. So here you could see how the currency system would have prohibited these builds from existing, requiring more skill in gameplay and less reliance on pure advantage. Also, you'll notice that Otz with the currency system would have gained 32% extra blood points because he didn't use his entire build allowance. So players actually get rewarded for not min min-maxing their builds. This also helps new players who don't use perks or use weaker perks because they're getting built-in BP bonuses that they might not even be aware of. In addition, running a perk like No Mither will now actually count as a negative perk, meaning it will add additional allowance to a build that can be used to bring stronger perks or simply to farm extra blood points. So the system is actually rewarding players for not sweating. So now that I've explained the system, we're moving on to the Q&A portion of the video where I'll answer the most commonly asked questions or arguments about the currency system. Question 1. How will the developers know which point values to assign everything in the game, from killers to perks to add-ons? Can we trust them to do that? The answer is, first of all, behavior already has to do this. They have to know how strong or weak everything in the game is. The only difference is that currently when they want to nerf or buff something, they have to talk about it, come up with a solution, implement that solution manually, test it privately, test it publicly, and then bring it to the live version of the game. Or possibly scrap everything they worked potentially months on because the community just didn't like it, which happens very often. Manually balancing everything in the game is very tricky because with so many variables in the game, balance becomes a Tetris board where one small change can have a huge ripple effect, changing the entire balance landscape. So when you compare that to assigning a point value that can be done in a day, it seems like the much more logical option. At worst, they make Decisive Strike cost 20 points instead of 25 points. Is that really so dramatic? They can always swap the value again later very easily if they need to, right? There isn't months of commitment to these changes with a currency system. Now this segues into question 2. Isn't this just a band-aid fix for bad balance? Do you really think the currency system will magically fix everything and nothing will need to be manually changed in the future? Of course not. I hear this a lot. The currency system is not a band-aid fix. If you're searching for an analogy, it's much closer to a dishwasher. Imagine you walk into a room with thousands of dirty dishes and they're continuously piling up while you're trying to clean them all by hand. Well, the currency system is essentially a dishwasher. It reduces the amount of dirty dishes, or in reality balance problems, to a reasonable and manageable level. Whereas right now it's not a matter of bad balance, it's a problem of impossible balance. The currency system allows the devs to really focus on the truly problematic issues in the game because all the less important problems are in the dishwasher. It's all really about efficiency and time management. So when the strongest things and the weakest things are more tethered to that Goldilocks zone of balance, it takes a huge weight off of the devs and makes everything much more manageable. And it also lets them focus in and really dedicate on those important issues. Whereas right now they have a massive time management issue where they're just rushing through things and making more problems than they're solving. Question 3. Won't the currency system punish casual 4-man swifts that are just looking to have fun? No, this is actually a huge self-report and a red flag. If there's a real casual 4-man swift that just wants to have fun, then the currency system will only help them achieve that because the killers they're playing against are going to have much more manageable builds to deal with. Likewise, if this supposed casual 4-man swift is hitting the currency limit with their builds, that means they're stacking meta and strong items, which also means they're not truly casual, and the only fun they're actually looking for is bullying a killer with that unfair advantage. Again, that's why this is a self-report. Question 4. Don't you think this system will be too confusing for DBD players? No, I actually think that's absurd. Anyone who's ever encountered a character limit in the wild will know it's very simple to understand. The game will simply tell you when you've gone over the limit and by how much. I know people love to feign stupidity when it benefits them, and I truly believe that's the real primary issue here. Also, new players won't even be able to hit the limit because of their limited perk options, so they'll just be getting bonus blood points for using off-meta starter builds. Question 5. I bought the game, I bought those perks, it's my right to be able to use them how I want. Actually, it's not. This argument doesn't make any sense. You can only bring 4 perks into a match. That's called a limitation, and they already exist in the game. Are you going to suddenly demand a refund because the devs don't allow you to bring every single perk into a match at the same time? What if one of those perks you bought gets nerfed? Everything has limitations and everything can change. Just because because something is new does not mean you need to adopt a primitive mindset and throw stones at the spaceship, right? Question 6. Won't this hurt build variety? This is one I hear all the time, and the answer is no. This will dramatically increase build variety. There's no variety if players just bring the best builds every time. Also, again, the devs chasing perfect balance will continue to kill interesting build setups in pursuit of it, just like the recent haste and hinder change proves. So the currency system not only preserves variety, but encourages it at the same time. In addition, remember that all killers in all survivor group sizes come with different build allowances, meaning there is no one size fits all solution like 4-gen slowdown or 4-second chances. There's a lot of variables at play now, and it's going to really force players to think outside the box when creating their builds. Question number 7. Won't this just end the same way where people find the best builds for each killer and survivor group size? Yes, but the outcome will be significantly different and way better. If you compare the old best nurse build to the new best nurse build, it's going to be night and day in terms of inherent advantage. The same goes for Swift. So even when we do get these new metas, they're going to be way healthier and more interesting than they are right now. Also, the devs would be in a position where they could instantly change the meta with a simple currency swap. On top of all of that, because of all of the new variables at play, the community is going to have a much harder time defining a meta when the answer is no longer just bring all the best stuff, which is what it is right now. You just quite literally bring all the best stuff and that's meta. And again, that is not variety. With the currency system, there's going to be a lot more personal preference involved in the builds that people come up with. Question number 8. Won't this take the developers forever to implement? No, it's made in a very standardized way, and again, it's not necessary for everything to be pixel perfect. So when you get to things like how much build allowance certain mid-tier killers receive, it only really needs to be ballpark at the start. It will quickly be observable what needs additional adjustments. For instance, if Chucky has 80 points at the start to spend on his build, but it turns out he should have had 70 instead, then it's not going to be game breaking, and again, it's very quick to change. Remember, this system is a dishwasher. It's washing thousands of balance issues all at the same time, giving the devs way more resources for the most important issues. And in complete honesty, I could have a rough draft price of everything in the game in a single workday by myself. So developing and coding the system would be the actual major task. Again though, the efficiency of it will pay for itself very quickly. It's a good investment. The last question, number 9. I main Blight or Nurse, so why am I being punished for using my favorite character? The answer is you're not being punished. Everyone else is being punished by the uncapped strength of your character and how it bottlenecks the game. So with this change, everything is now being equalized, which is actually fair. More importantly, keep in mind that without the currency system, your favorite character like Blight or Nurse would eventually be gutted and stripped of what actually makes them unique and fun to play. If you cannot enjoy Blight without 4 meta perks, then you never really enjoyed Blight to begin with. So I believe those are the most common questions about the currency system. I believe it would help DBD in so many ways that it's almost sad to assume that it will most likely never happen. I know a lot of people will just say let it go, nobody likes this idea, it would ruin the game. I hear these things all the time, but they do honestly in a lot of cases seem like self-reports. If my idea is bad, you should be able to argue the point logically and make me understand why the idea is bad. Again, it seems like people try too hard to prove me wrong instead of trying to dismantle the idea of the currency system itself. That said, for the chads that actually sat through the entire video, it's much appreciated, and your parents love you more than any of your gutter siblings. Also, as always, thanks so much for watching and have a good one.